guys, this is Spiffy Guy and I'm back with another video here. We're going to do a short little video and we're going to talk about gear. What else do we talk about here? In a previous video I got a question about why I don't use a wood gasifier stove. And I initially dismissed it as weight because a wood gasifier does weigh more than an alcohol stove. But the question kind of nagged in my brain and I couldn't sleep at night and I was thinking about it all day long, and so now I got to do this video to get it out of my head. So the question that was running in my head is whether or not the weight of a wood gasifier stove is actually lighter in the long run than an alcohol stove. When I try to kind of plan out my gear, I try to look at, like, you know, a 10-day hike, you know, maybe a 12-day hike. How is my gear going to work on a longer hike? Because if it'll work for a longer hike, then it's definitely going to work for a shorter one. You know, if I'm only out for 2 days, the gear will work. If I'm out for 10 days, I want to make sure that the gear works as well. So I started thinking about the weight of the stove and the fuel involved, and that's kind of why I'm doing this video. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about my stove, which is the Super Cat that I use, and a wood gasifier stove, which I have just built. And I will do a video on how to build one of these. So this is a wood gasifier stove that I built, and this is the windscreen / pot stand. Okay, so that's stove number one. Stove number two is going to be our Super Cat, and we're going to use the dock because I think in winter conditions the dock is going to increase the efficiency of the Super Cat. And we have a windscreen for that as well, and the Super Cat stove is the pot stand. Okay, so we have two separate stoves here, and these are just obviously my opinions. There's a lot of different stoves out there, a lot of different configurations that may have weight, so your mileage may vary. Now I made this one. This is made out of a couple paint cans, and like I said, I'll do a video on this. But you can buy commercial ones that you know, probably will work better than this one. But they're the Bush Buddy is another one. The Solo Pot is another one. And I know that the Bush Buddy weighs about 5 ounces. This particular one weighs in at 6.05 ounces, so just a hair over 6 ounces. Okay, and the Super Cat over here weighs in at a whopping 1.3 ounces. So there's your weight difference. Okay, you got 6 ounces, you got 1.3 ounces, right? Seems like a no-brainer. The alcohol stove is lighter, but you have to keep in mind fuel, because the alcohol stove requires fuel. So let's add the fuel on there. Okay, we'll put our alcohol stove back up on top, and now we're at 16.15 ounces. Okay, so now we're 10 ounces over this. So the question is which one's better? Which one's more weight efficient? And then I started thinking about other things, you know, the pros and cons of a wood stove, wood gasifier stove versus an alcohol stove. Obviously, with an alcohol stove, you need fuel. When this runs out, your alcohol stove doesn't work. The beauty of the wood gas stove is that you can burn pretty much anything. You know, you can find acorns, pine cones, you know, chunks of wood, cow dung, you know, camel dung, who knows, whatever. If you can fit it into the burn chamber, and you're going to be able to burn it up, and you're not going to have a problem with fuel, unless of course you're in an area that doesn't have a whole lot of combustible fuel, like the desert or whatever. The bonus of the alcohol stove is obviously this is going to get lighter the further into your trip. So as you burn fuel, this will get lighter. So at the end of your hike, this system is still going to be lighter than this, because this is always going to be 6.05 ounces. Doesn't matter whether it is at the beginning of the hike or the end of the hike, it's still going to weigh the same. So some other things that came into my mind is that unless you build a specific alcohol stove that has a simmer on it, this is pretty much on or off. It's one temperature. Whereas with the gasifier stove or a wood burning stove, you can vary the heat depending upon the amount of fuel in there. You could let the fuel simmer down a little bit and only add a few sticks if you want to keep a simmer going if you're going to cook something like eggs, things like that in the morning, which would be useful compared to the alcohol stove, because I'm not really too keen about burning anything but water over an alcohol stove just from the fumes. I don't know, I'm going to end up with a third eye or something. I don't know what it's going to do to me. So the burn temperature and the ability to vary your cooking temperature kind of, you know, lends the gasifier stove to a bonus in this corner. So once again, which one's better? I don't know. You're going to need to figure out what works for you. Now, let's talk about cleanup real quick. Obviously, with the alcohol stove, you know, once it cools down, you just stick it back in there and put it in your pot. They're both pretty compact. This will fit in my right into my Snow Peak 900, so it's a little bit higher, but the lid just sits a little bit higher. It's not really that big of a deal. I put this in the outside pouch, so I have enough vertical space. So really, the compactness of an alcohol stove is not really outweighed by this wood gasifier. One problem you're going to have with the wood gasifier is soot. You are burning wood. You're going to have soot on the bottom of your pot, okay? And you're also going to possibly have soot around here. So you may need to make a little kind of stuff sack for it. You could probably make one on a Tyvek super light just to keep it from, you know, getting soot everywhere, you know, soot shaking out the bottom or whatever. Whereas the alcohol stove, you know, you just pack it up, put it away. You also have to make sure that you're not going to spill this. You want to make sure that your alcohol or whatever fuel you're using is in a you know, container that's going to be robust enough for the length of your hike and not spill everywhere, because that would be bad. Another bonus for the wood stove back into the fuel availability is if you need to boil more water. Let's say, you know, you boil up some water, you cook your food. Now let's say you want to boil up some water and wash up a little bit. Well, now you're burning more fuel. You're reducing the amount of fuel that you have per day. This one burns about, I'd say about 25 milliliters for 2 cups. So if this is a 500 milliliter, I got 2 burns per day for 10 days. That's it. So that's all the fuel I have for 10 days. After that, I have to resupply. So any additional water that you want to burn or anything like that, you can just add more wood. So that's one really big bonus of the wood burner here compared to the alcohol stove. Another thing to think about is the laws in your area. There are laws in regards to open flame containers. I know that in spring 2014, which we're rolling into, the Pacific Crest Trail folks are saying no open burning containers without a fuel shutoff valve. So basically no stoves, no alcohol stoves at all. No Esbit stoves, and probably no wood burning stoves. Now you could probably get away with using this as a contained fire. A lot of places will say no open fires, but they'll allow you to do fires in the grills at the campsites and things like that, where this may fall underneath that law that you can use that. So, you know, this just kind of my thoughts. I built one of these because I wanted to try it out, and like I said, it was kind of nagging at me. I'm going to bring this on the next few hikes that I do and see how I like it, because, you know, honestly, with the weight of fuel and the availability of fuel, that, you know, this really shines on that, is that you can burn pretty much anything you want. And if you wanted to boil more water, let's say you needed to disinfect it got freezing and your filter was left outside and it's suspect, you need to boil your water now, you're going to run out of fuel real quick. Whereas this, you know, you won't. Now obviously you can make an open fire, but you may be in a situation where open fires aren't allowed in the park or whatever you're hiking. So you have a nice contained fire. This is not going to scorch the ground. It's not going to damage the ground. So it kind of falls a little bit more under leave no trace. My big question in regards to the wood gasifier is, how does it compare to other wood burners like the Emberlit, the Chi-Wiz Firefly stove, the Nimble Will Nomad that I've created? How does the gasifier really produce that much more efficiency over just a regular wood burner? And that's something that I will have to test at some point in a later video. But I'd like to hear from you guys and you know, see what you think about that and what you prefer as your stove. Whether you think that, you know, a wood burner is better than an alcohol stove versus an Esbit stove. And that's one of the things that may not be a fair comparison between the alcohol and the wood burner is, you know, whether it's apples to apples or apples to oranges. That's the case. Would the alcohol stove be better compared to an Esbit stove, which both have, you know, a fuel that, you know, will burn up and not go away, and compare the gasifier stove versus a regular wood burner stove? So those are the questions, those are the things that run through my mind. So if you have any comments on that, go ahead and leave them below. And I also have a new Facebook page, so I figured I'd tell everybody about that. You can go to facebook.com/SpiffyGuyAdventures, and you will find me on Facebook. I'll post up videos and random things that leak out of my melon. I'll post them up there on the Facebook. And until the next video, why don't you guys go out and have an adventure of your own and get cooking.